Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Sunday School Dropouts podcast. We are so happy that you're with us today.
Yes, it's so good to have everybody here. As we're recording this, it's getting cold outside, like freezing cold. It is, we're in the thick of the holiday spirit.
Yes, yeah, we absolutely are. I know, everybody's putting, now the weekend after Thanksgiving, when we're recording, everybody's putting up Christmas stuff, and it's just... And it got cold. It's just out the last 7 days, it was not that cold. And now suddenly it's it was in the low 20s last night, I think. So.
I know. I will say I was that person who definitely has had my Christmas tree up already. My house has been decorated since the weekend after the elections. And that was on purpose because I just needed a little bit of holiday cheer, my kind of holiday cheer, no nativity sets or anything like that. Lots of other mythical creatures.
No, totally understandable. I think, it's funny. It's one of those things where I know it's such a thing that people like to fight about how early you put Christmas stuff up before Thanksgiving or not. And it's just let's let people enjoy things. Who cares?
Yeah. And I feel like this year, I did this in 2020 also, but I felt like this year, it's I just needed something, that I felt was joyful and delightful. And I was I need that. That gives me a little bit of something different to focus on than all the other things going on in our country and the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Well, I'm really excited about our episode today. And what, so this episode and the next, for those listening, we're going to be answering questions that a lot of you asked about just things regarding religious trauma and the holidays, how to navigate the holidays when you have family who still believe, just all the nuance there. There's so many different things, and I know that the holidays can be a really challenging time of year. I think in general, but especially for those who either have left or maybe are in the midst of leaving or thinking about leaving a high control religion.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited for this episode. I know we did this a little bit last year too, where we asked people to submit questions. We got some really, really great questions, and we started doing that again a couple weeks ago. We started posting stuff on Instagram. We got some incredible questions, some deep questions, a lot of repeat questions, which means that, a lot of people are wondering about stuff with family and traditions and how to celebrate the holidays post religion, post church, things like that. So I think we're going to get into it. But before then, we have a couple segments that we want to do because we don't want it to be how do we deal with our families? We need some, trivia in there. We need some fun memories as well. So I think let's get into it. Let's do a little quiz. Are you ready for that, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, so we had our elections Jeopardy, and I felt like what better way to bring back Jeopardy than with Christmas-themed or holiday-themed Jeopardy questions. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just do a few rounds of it, and I'll ask you, you can ask me. And of course, remember, since it's Jeopardy, you have to ask it or say the answer in the form of a question. So I don't know what we're playing for. Yeah, otherwise it doesn't count. The other person wins. Playing for bragging rights or, an extra gift from Santa Claus or something like that. So, all right. So I will go first with the first question. And it is, this giggling red monster was the hit of the holidays as the best-selling Christmas toy of 1996.
Okay. Giggling monster? Red monster? Is that what you said?
Yeah. This giggling red monster was the hit of the holidays as the best-selling Christmas toy of 1996.
What were red things that were popular back in my childhood? Let's see. You said it was a monster, so I don't feel like it's Clifford the Big Red Dog.
You're not that far away with that answer, but it's not that.
I feel like there was a name for this. I don't remember the specific name, but I know what is or who is Elmo? Sesame Street? Is this?
Yes, yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. What is Tickle Me Elmo?
Oh yeah, Tickle Me Elmo. That's it. That's oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That brings back some memories.
I know. Now I'm thinking of it because I would have been like 14, almost 15 at that point. So I was just like a little bit too old for it. But I do remember the commercials, like the like so funny.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was the craze. I mean, people were paying hundreds of dollars for Tickle Me Elmo. So.
Man, now that you say that, actually, I do remember that. Like, I remember like this whole thing about like on the news. It'd be like leading up to into Christmas, and it'd be like sold out at Toys R Us, sold out at Target,
everywhere.
People getting in fights over it at Walmart or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
Oh my god.
So that was
Elmo,
that.
Of all things. Okay.
I love it.
All right. So, are you ready for one?
I'm ready. Give it to me.
Let's see this. Oh, this is an interesting one. Okay. So the English also refer to Santa Claus by this proper sounding name.
Oh. I have no idea. Who is Mr. Santa Claus?
It's like, well, they're British. We'll just add a Mr. at the beginning. It's probably
Sir Santa Claus.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good guess. Given that it's English. So the correct answer is, what is Father Christmas?
Oh, yeah, I should have known that.
Which
I was going to say Saint Nicholas, but then I was like, that I think is German, so not that.
Yeah, good
Saint
point.
Nikolaus, it's something. Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe it's Austrian. Wow, we're really bad at this. It's okay.
Yeah,
we grew up sheltered.
We did. I mean, we were church kids. Like, you can't. What do you all expect from us?
Yeah, exactly. All right, I've got one for you. Let's see if this stereotype is true, or if you fit the stereotype. Okay. 1 in 3 men wait until this day to do their Christmas shopping.
Oh well, I don't even. What is Christmas Eve?
Yeah,
and no, I don't do that.
Correct.
But I do know. I know men. I know it's, if they could do it Christmas morning and like have like Amazon Prime 1 hour delivery, they would probably do that, to be fair.
Absolutely. So. I will say, nobody knows who my dad is, but I will fully out him that he is, in my childhood, was one of these men. And I just knew that as soon as he got home, like it was down to the Christmas paper wrapping room, and I was wrapping all the gifts for my mom on Christmas Eve afternoon and night. And, my mom would have no gifts under the tree until like 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve, because that's when my dad finally did his Christmas shopping. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very familiar story across the country. So,
yep. So, yeah. Right. Also, he paid me to do it. So I'm sorry if my family, I'm outing you, Dad. Like, you paid me to wrap the Christmas gifts for Mom. So there we go.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, at least it wasn't just expected free labor. I mean,
exactly. Exactly.
Worth,
yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Here's a good one. During the holidays, this famous New York City landmark features a colossal Christmas tree and a popular ice skating rink.
Oh, I know this. What is Rockefeller Center?
Yep.
Yes.
Rockefeller Center.
And as we're recording this, which is, a little bit over a week before it drops, they are doing the lighting of the Christmas tree this weekend. So by the time people are listening to it, it'll be just a couple days before then. They lit the tree in Rockefeller Center.
Nice. So. I know what it is, but I wasn't even keeping up when that happens, the date of the lighting. That's cool.
I only know that because it was on a pop culture podcast that I was listening to. Contrary to what you might think, I don't have it on my calendar. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know why people know random bits of information, but I mean, I'm here for it.
Exactly. So. Exactly.
Not here to judge.
Okay. Well, final question for you. Let's see. In Germany, this frightening anti-Santa Claus with goat's hooves and horns punishes children who misbehave instead of bringing them gifts.
Yeah. Oh, man. I know what that is. What is that called? Because I think isn't there even like an episode of The Office where Dwight does something with this?
I I feel like there is.
And I know what it is. What is it called though?
Our editor Kevin might be able to fact check us on this one because he's a big Office fan. Like I am too, but way bigger fan than I am.
I might be mispronouncing it. Is it like Krampus? Krampus?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Like with a K. Yeah. I know it started with a K, and I'm like, what is that word?
Yeah. Who or what is, I think it's called Krampus.
Right. I didn't ask it as a question, so never mind. I guess it doesn't.
Yeah. I got the point. Just
fair
kidding.
enough. But yeah. No, I'm just proud of myself. Like actually, because I remembered it. Like, I know I can even visualize it. Like I know that.
Yep.
I know that lore, but I couldn't remember.
I love it. All right. One more question that you have for me.
Here's a good one. So the color of Elvis's suede shoes, as well as the Christmas he will have without you.
Ooh. I'm going to say, what is the color blue? I'll have a blue Christmas without you.
You are correct. It is indeed blue.
I do very much know my Christmas music. So, yeah. Good job. I think we both won on that game.
Sounds good. All right. So, Laura, I'm curious, what are some of the funniest Christmas memories that you have from growing up?
Yes. Well, we were fundamentalists, so not very fun, because we took the fun out of fundamentalism. I'm just kidding. No. Okay. So, most people know that I grew up at a camp, and it was very, very large. We lived there year round, not in like a tent. We had an actual house. But, we had a ropes course, we had a lake, we had a horse corral, we had a petting zoo, we had all the things. And, some of the other adults that worked there, I think, we're like, hey, we can kind of take advantage of these kids a little bit and, get them to do our grunt work on the holidays. And we'll just say that we'll pay them a few bucks or something. And so this happened several years, but the first year was the best. One of my brothers and myself, so we were the older of the siblings, and we were asked to feed the llamas at the petting zoo every morning. And of course, that included Christmas morning. And my youngest sibling is to this day, he is a grown adult man, but just really loves opening gifts. And so my other brother and I were at the age where we didn't care as much. It wasn't like as big of a thing to have to open the gifts from, Santa on Christmas morning. And so, we told him the night before, like, hey, we're not gonna be able to open gifts until we're back from feeding the llamas. And he was like, well, please, can you just do it early? And we were like, no, we really, really can't. And he's like, come on, I want to be able to open my presents. And we were like, sorry, we can't. And so then that next morning, we definitely did not go early. And we took our precious time having to feed the llamas. And we walked very slowly back from the horse corral / petting zoo. And then we were like, oh, we got to go do this too and this too. And my poor youngest brother was just dying. He just was so mad at us for holding up his gift opening. And I will say, it's not like the funniest story or whatever, but it's funny in our family because, he even has children now and they know this story and they're like, Dad, let's just wait to open gifts, and he just still to this day is like, oh, we just need to open the presents, and he does not like to wait. So yeah, that's maybe one of the funniest ones, only because it's lasted, 30 years. So
no, I love that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. But yeah, that was what came to mind. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I was just going to say it's the funniest stories for you and everyone else, maybe most traumatizing for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he had to wait for his presents.
Exactly. Yeah. Now I give him free therapy as a gift because I'm like, yeah, you're still scarred from that time that we took an extra long time to feed the llamas. So. Poor
Oh,
guy.
gosh.
Poor guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. Talking about funniest Christmas memories. It's like I do actually genuinely have good memories of Christmas. But that being said, I don't know how many of them are funny, really. Like, I was gonna say what you said though. Like I grew up in Adventism. Like humor is not the reason for the season. So I don't know why we'd be focusing on that.
Exactly.
But,
yeah, it's not your forte. Fun is not your forte.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. And maybe this is more. I don't even know if this is funny. Maybe funny, like, but not in the haha sense of funny. Maybe, but I do remember there was one Christmas. I actually got a really cool gift. I mean, at the time, it was like something I was really excited about. I'm pretty sure it was rollerblades because it was
nice
90s kid, right? So
yes.
But also that day, like, I didn't know it at the time. I was a kid. I was like young. Anyway, I was getting an ear infection, and so I actually kind of felt like crap, like halfway through the morning, and was just like laying around on the couch as a little kid. And I remember, like, for most of the morning, my parents actually just thought I was sulking, like I was pissed because I didn't get some other bigger present that I wanted. And then that afternoon, my dad took me to like urgent care, I think.
Oh, nice.
I'm pretty sure that was Christmas Day.
Yeah, Andrew the ungrateful.
I know. It was like I really wasn't ungrateful. Like I was excited about it. I just felt like crap. So it didn't look like it.
Yeah, that's so sad. And yeah, I mean, yeah, the things that our parents think, he didn't get the gift he wants. So now he's being sulking about it.
It's like, I'm just going to stonewall you guys for the rest of the day. I'll talk to you in New Year's.
Wow, good for you. Talk about determination. It's kind of impressive.
I was a very determined and stubborn child, so.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, well, we can kind of wrap that up there. And then, Kevin, if you want to do an interlude. And then my thought with the questions is we can kind of just go back and forth between like who's asking them. We can both add in answers and, stuff like that. But like you'll see there's a couple that are, like the first one has like 2 indented questions. So it's kind of like we can do all of that at the same time, or we can talk about it all at the same time rather than asking the 3 separate questions. Or, I mean, we can ask the 3 separate questions, but you can answer it all at the same time. That's kind of what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does that feel okay?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Awesome. All right. Do you want me to just kind of lead into this and get into it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, it is time for us to answer your questions. And like we said at the top of the episode, several of these questions came in and they were along the same theme. So we're not going to answer every individual question, but we'll kind of wrap some of these questions up together. So hopefully, you can take something from it. So I guess I'll start out asking the first one and we'll just kind of go back and forth with answering and talking through some of these things. We got a few questions that were something to the tune of, I'm opting out of holidays with my family for the first time and I feel guilty. Or why do I feel bad for not seeing my parents this holiday season, even though I know that it's the right thing for me? Why am I feeling so bad? Why am I feeling so guilty? So Andrew, what do we have to say to these people?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that I would say is, well, first of all, good for you for doing what, just even how the question was framed, what you recognize as being the right thing for you. I think it's pretty natural to feel guilty about that, though, especially the first time or the first few times that you do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for a lot of folks who grew up in high control religions or even just high control family systems, maybe that weren't even overtly religious. There's like a lot of expectations of what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to show up. And those expectations are always centered around not what you need, but about what others need, what the family needs, what your mom needs, what the church needs, whatever.
Right.
And so it is going, it runs deep. I mean, there's like that programming that, it makes sense that you would be feeling guilty because that's kind of what we were conditioned to feel. Like how dare you center yourself at the expense of what other people want. So really, I guess first thing I would just normalize that. Like, that makes sense that she would be feeling that.
Yeah. And I think too, feeling guilty about something does not necessarily mean that you've actually done something wrong. Like you said, when we're conditioned to always honor your father and mother, or to make sure that you're not displeasing or making other people comfortable with your actions, I think then we are also then trained to say, well, then if I feel guilty, that must be the Holy Spirit convicting me. That must be my conscience saying that, hey, I really am doing something bad or wrong. When in reality, we're just getting used to doing something that we haven't done before. It's very unfamiliar. So that feeling of guilt does not necessarily mean that you are doing anything wrong. It's just that you're doing something different than what you've done before, or maybe it's not just the first time, maybe it's every time, but you're still doing something different than you have in years past, and it feels unfamiliar, and it might always feel a little bit guilting, right? Because we're also trained, in our DNA and our bodies, our nervous systems, like we're always probably going to want that approval from our parents, that connection with our parents, that ability to say, hey, despite all of our differences, we can still share these things together. So I think there's always that kid part of you that even if it's the 15th year that you haven't spent with your family, there might always be that like tug on your heart of, well, maybe I should go spend time with them, or maybe I am doing the wrong thing. And I would say that that's usually that younger part of us that's coming out trying to protect us. It's trying to make sure that we're okay. But that part hasn't gotten the message yet, or needs to be reminded, or needs some help in feeling safe to say like, hey, it's okay that we're not spending time with the family this year. I know it's tough. I know it feels awkward. I know it feels scary. Like we might get in trouble, but it's okay. Like I, as the adult, I'm here to make sure that things go according to the new plan that I have. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of what comes to mind for me, as thinking through some of these questions. Anything else, Andrew?
Yeah. No, I really do think that covers it. It's, it's not easy just to get to say that. Like, it's not easy, and it's understandable that shows up, but that doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. Mm-hmm. You're still doing, and especially, doing what you recognize is this is what is right for you. This is what you need. And, good for you. I think that's great that people are, mm-hmm. doing that even when it's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You've got this. Yeah. That's, just to echo that. Mm-hmm.
Well, another, I've definitely seen this one come up, this mm-hmm. question, this concern, just navigating this whole thing. So the stigma of singleness and the holidays.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there's like, mm-hmm. so many things that brings up in my mind. I'm curious what comes up for you though around that.
Yeah, I think my heart really connects to this question because I feel like probably more often than not, I've been single for the holidays, and sometimes it's harder than others. Nowadays it doesn't feel as difficult as it did like in my 20s or when my siblings were getting married and some of those sorts of things. And I have a different relationship to the holidays than I did, in years past. But I just want to like validate that I think it can be really, really hard because culturally speaking and even religiously speaking, there is a big push towards either partnership or family during the holidays. So all of that. And so if you're single, meaning like unpartnered, or maybe you don't have children for whatever reason, or, you're not connected to your family, I think that singleness can stand out a little bit more. It can feel a little bit more tender. And so I just want to validate that to begin with, that there's nothing wrong with you for feeling sad or for feeling bad or for feeling like you want to just, get on a plane and fly to Tahiti for, a few weeks and come back after the new year. I think that it is totally normal. And you're right in the sense that, our culture is not set up to support single people the way that it is set up to support partnered folks as well as families. That's what comes to mind at first. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah. Oh, it's just one of the things I always makes me think of is because like around the stigma of it, like, and it's funny because there's going to be folks in your family, like if you are single and you're going to like family events where they themselves wouldn't even think that what they're doing is stigmatizing the singleness, but they actually are. Just things like the assumption of like, well, who are you seeing now? Or and if you're not, then like, oh, well, that's okay. Oh, I'm sure you'll meet somebody. Like the implication being like that's the natural state of things and what you should want. Even let's say that you're perfectly content being single and have no desire for a partner, like which is perfectly valid. But then even just the framing of that question is like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, well, you'll find somebody like that. You're not actually okay where you're at right now. I think there's a lot of that shows up.
Yeah. I'm not sure what your history is, but I know one thing that I've had to kind of grapple with is that there was a long period of years where I was single and didn't feel like I could have any boundaries around the holidays, like with my family. Like I didn't feel like I could say, hey, I'm not going to come back to such and such place for Christmas this year. I'm not going to be celebrating in that way. I'm not making the trip, especially because I live a significant distance away from the majority of my family. And there was many years where I felt there was a huge obligation. Like I just had to go along with here's what is happening. And I don't have a partner and I can't go to their family's house. I don't have children, so we don't have our own traditions or whatever. And I think it was really important for me to realize at some point that my personhood is, and what I wanted is valid enough to say like, this is a yes, this is a no, this is a not right now. And I just want to encourage people in that too. Like people may not understand that, like, oh, well, what are you going to do then? You're going to just sit at home by yourself? Yeah, maybe. And maybe that's okay. And maybe it's also sad. Like that's okay too. But it's also okay to say like, I don't, want to do X, Y, or Z, or it doesn't feel like I have capacity to do these things. And even if other people don't understand why you might say no, or that you would say no in favor of not doing anything or spending time with friends or whatever, that's okay. Like you're allowed to do that. I think that was really helpful for me whenever I realized that I can create kind of my own tradition around like, if I want to go somewhere for Christmas, what I want to do. And it doesn't have to make sense for anybody else. It just has to make sense for me.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've often said about, just boundaries and what you're describing is like the idea of folks not understanding it. Like they don't have to understand it to respect it. Like they can still respect that boundary. And if they don't understand it, like, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. Okay. This is your holiday too. You get to spend it how you want to. So yeah, I very much encourage that. All right. Kind of on the other side of the spectrum, the next question is, how do I deal with my new in-laws who are religious and want to talk about religion and politics at family gatherings? Oof. I can imagine there's many people, new in-laws or old in-laws, that are probably feeling this.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, but truly, like, I kind of even to go back to what we were saying on the other one, in that you have a right to, you don't just have to suck it up and deal with it. Is, I guess, where I would start. I mean, it's up to you what that needs to look like. I suppose it depends how maybe obnoxious they are. It's like, if it's something that you can just be there and that's, and having like being with the family is more of value to you than,
sure,
vocally creating a boundary or something. Fair enough. But also you don't have to do that. It's really, you get to decide what that looks like. 'Cause that is tough. And it's one of those things where it's like, if I were working with a client, for example, like in this case, I'm always careful, like, to not be prescriptive and let my own background and baggage dictate what I'm suggesting they do. 'Cause really, I can't tell you what you should do. It's up to you what you do. But then once we tease out what it is that you want to do, then I want to help you. Okay, well, let's find ways to do that. So yeah, it's like, it's okay to have boundaries and not put yourself in those environments too. I will say that.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking too, so this episode drops about 2 weeks before Christmas, like the Christmas holidays. And I know that there's many other holidays outside of just the Americanized Christian tradition of Christmas. So this applies to any of the holidays, but I'm thinking, specifically about the Christmas holiday. We're about a couple weeks away from it as this drops. And so there is some time between now and then, and maybe use that to your advantage to start setting the tone a little bit to maybe it's maybe there are family members that would respond well to saying like, hey, can we set some parameters for what we're going to be talking about at Christmas? Could we say like, here are some off the table subjects? Like, we're just not going to go there. It's a family holiday. We want to enjoy each other. And so the best way we can do that is by not talking about these 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Or you could also say, hey, here's the safe topics. So let's stick to these 5 things instead of these other things over here, and seeing maybe if there could be some agreement, or maybe there's some boundaries that you can example or talk to them about ahead of time, and to just say like, hey, I realize that these subjects might come up. If or when that happens, I'm not going to participate, or I'm going to go ahead and take a break. I'm going to, step outside, or I might try to redirect the conversation. Sometimes that would be helpful to tell people up front. Other times you don't have to, and you can just go ahead and do that. But I think that if you're feeling like it's important, or you quote unquote have to be at this family gathering, what are the ways that you can go into it with some boundaries already in mind? And I think too, like when we set boundaries, especially ahead of time, some people might be confused by them, but if you can set them in such a way where you're going, I really want us to have as good of a time as we possibly can. And here's the ways that I see that being able to happen. And I'm wondering, would you participate in that with me? I think that has a different kind of energy behind it, rather than just like approaching someone and being like, if you talk about this, I'm out, right? They're going to be like very defensive. They might not be on board. They might be very confused. They might push you. They might try to bulldoze through those boundaries. But if you go in with that attitude of, hey, I want us to have a really good time. Could we agree on some parameters or some guardrails? You might get some buy-in. And also, if it's your in-laws, make sure that your partner is also, kind of driving that conversation as well. Because you don't want to be seen as the person-in-law, the daughter-in-law, the son-in-law, the human-in-law, like that is like, trying to shake things up too much. Like, hopefully you can get buy-in from your partner who can also drive some of those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a thought and it just totally escaped me. So
that's okay. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah. I think also along the lines of boundaries, like it might be one of those things too, where you're thinking through, okay, so what would it look like to maybe, if we have to travel for a holiday, do we stay somewhere different? Do we give ourselves some time limits? Do we give ourselves some natural outs and breaks and stuff like that, so that if those discussions do happen, that I have a way to like plant my feet in the ground, to get away, to take some space. I think that can be really helpful too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I remembered what I was going to say. And that is just the way that you described kind of like bringing up the conversation at all, doing it like ahead of time, but then even just the energy with which you're doing so definitely is much more, it's collaborative rather than like a power struggle or because like, truly with boundaries, it's like, I think a lot of people, or at least when I grew up, the way that boundaries were framed, and this of course was in the church, was that they were inherently selfish.
Yes.
That they weren't good. It was a bad thing to do. It was a selfish thing to do. But really it's like the idea is like, boundaries really is a way of framing how close I can be to someone while still honoring my own needs. Like the goal is not to cut you out. That's a whole different conversation. And so, yeah, if we can frame it in a way where we're letting it be clear that like, we're on the same team. I want to have a meaningful relationship with you. And then like, can we, work together to make that happen,
Yeah. Yeah. I think we often will be surprised at what people are okay with when we can bring it up in that collaborative way. I think that can be really helpful. So yeah, that's a lot though.
So let's see here. Got another question. Still pertinent to family stuff. This one is how do you celebrate Christmas with kids who are used to the nativity story and focusing so much on Jesus and church during the holiday season?
Ooh,
That's
a good one. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's hard because I can think of many friends I have, many clients I have where they spent a number of years raising their children inside of a church or a high control religion, and their kids did, have that upbringing, and now that's not a part of who they are, like of who their family is. And the first thought that comes to mind is, what would it be like to maybe expand, like as a family, expand what different cultural and world traditions around these holidays look like? So instead of, maybe we don't disregard the nativity story and we say like, okay, that's it. We're, like that, it's stupid, it's dumb, it's whatever. What would happen if you were to like introduce other cultural traditions, other, world traditions around these holidays to expand their knowledge? Like, and really framing it as like the nativity story is from one religious tradition, but there's all these other religious traditions and stories that are also a part of this time of year. Like the reason we call it the holiday season is not to take Christ out of Christmas, but it's because there's like 26 holidays that happen between Thanksgiving and the end of the calendar year. And so that's the holiday season. So what if you even just like expanded what the holiday season was and start to incorporate some of those stories, some of those traditions, learning about different cultures and traditions? I think that could be something that would be helpful, and letting them, even take the lead in some of that. What are some things that you want to explore as the kids? But also, like, validating confusion, validating like sadness, letting them grieve, to say like, yeah, it is different, if they don't have this same tradition that they've had for 4 or 6 or 8 or 10 or however many years that you're not participating in that. I think giving them some room and space to let them process and feel and grieve without your own stuff as the parent getting in the way can be really, really helpful. Letting them ask questions, answering them, talking to them through some of those things, of course, in an age appropriate way. But yeah, those are some things that come to mind because your kids are valid, and it's valid what they're going through as well.
Yeah, I think the way, like everything you said, I agree with all of that. One thing too, it's like it's natural that kids are gonna, I think, grieve that and be confused by that. I do think though that just being honest about where you're at, like if that's like, things change, and like that's okay. That's absolutely okay. Furthermore, I think if that's, is still something that's very meaningful to the kid, it doesn't mean that they can't still find meaning in that, and find comfort in that. I think that's one of those things where it's okay as a parent that if you're kind of steering away from that now, and that doesn't mean that your child has to do the same. And both of those things can they can exist together, and I really think that is okay. Just being honest about where you're at, and then just leading with curiosity and compassion, like where your kid's at, and just. But I do think being honest about it and talking about it rather than not talking about it, I think is absolutely, though. There may be hard stuff that comes up, but I definitely think talking about it in age appropriate ways, like you said, I think is necessary. Yeah,
that curiosity and compassion piece, like you said, is what continues to come to mind, of like making sure that as the parent, your triggers aren't leading the way in the conversations you're having with your kids. Like, of course, that, when you're I have several friends who came out of high control religions who have children, and their children are wanting to maybe go to church, or they're wanting to celebrate things in a certain way. That can be very hard because as the parent, you're going, oh my gosh, I see all these harmful things about this. I don't want my children to have to suffer the way that I did, or be taught these things or whatnot. And so I think it's then easy to just like really shut that down and be like, no, we're not doing that. But I think if we can check back in with ourselves and try to then lead in those conversations with curiosity and compassion. So tell me what feels important about that to you. What are you hoping that you might get out of this tradition, this church service, this whatever? Giving them the ability to critically think like, oh, why does that appeal to you? And I think around like, Christmas in particular, the traditions, it's like there's a sense of togetherness, there's joyfulness, there's merriment. And the only place that so many kids have known that is within that Christmas tradition. So what if we pull those things out that they're really liking, this time spent, the activities? Could we still take all of those pieces from it and just translate that into other areas of life during this time, as well as even other times during the year? And that feels like that could also be really honoring what it is that they want to get out of the holiday tradition, maybe just not so closely tied or even overcoupled with some of the Christian traditions around Christmas. All right, this is a fun one. Kind of goes hand in hand with the question we just talked about, but how do you tell your kids that you no longer trust churches or believe and are agnostic, or do you just fake it until they move away? I love this question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, we definitely did touch on a little bit of that, I think, but no, that's how do you tell your kids you no longer trust? Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I don't think you just fake it until they move away. I will say that.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because whether it's even just whether they implicitly or explicitly know, they're going to know you're faking it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And what a terrible position for you to have to be in, to like fake your beliefs and go to churches and stuff like that for years. Yeah. That would be so hard for everybody.
That is a tough one though. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what I think was already said, what you said, I really like the idea of like teasing out like what it is about different traditions and things that they maybe find value in, and realizing like there's still ways that we can take that and still have it, even if it's not in the context of like the church, like maybe that it once was. I do think though, it is a thing where I do think that talk to your kids. Age appropriate, but I will say that I do feel pretty strongly about, I don't think it's something that, faking it until they move away is going to really serve anybody in the long run.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me, maybe this is a poor analogy, but I think about parents who have gotten divorced, and maybe let's just say that one of the parents in particular was very controlling or abusive or narcissistic, and and they have their whole history of that. And then now you're sharing custody. And, it's this balance that a lot of parents walk of going, I want my child to have a relationship with their parent, but I also don't want to lie to them. And so it's like each step of the way, there is an amount of appropriateness according to their age of information that they might need to know. Maybe that's based off of questions that they're asking. Maybe it's based off of the experiences that are happening, where you then as the parent explain things that would be important for them to know going forward. And as they get older, they might know a little more and a little more and a little more, and they might ask questions and they might see things for themselves. And that's like the open door then that a parent has to be able to say like, okay, well, there's this or that, while still honoring that, like, you can have the relationship with your parent, this other parent. Like, I'm not going to take that away from you. My own stuff is not going to be the thing that, gets in the way of this relationship, knowing that that other parent is going to be the one that probably ruins the relationship. Like you don't have to do anything to do that. Right. And so I don't know that the analogy entirely fits, but I think about that with churches too. Like, it's important to say, like, and be honest, I'm not, this is not an institution that I find myself drawn to anymore. This is not something I'm going to participate in. I am happy to continue to take you to church. I'm happy to continue to support the relationships you have there. I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah. I'm happy to have these conversations, but I'm not going to participate in that. And there's always an open door to know more if you want. And maybe then as they grow up, you share a little bit more and a little bit more about those experiences, but it's based on the questions they're asking, the experiences they're having, the age that they are. And then you're still able as the parent to step away and take care of yourself and do your own healing work without having to fake it with your kids, and trusting that they can make their own decisions, as they grow up and they get older, and they can make that choice for themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the biggest things that is just realizing that, you can believe one thing and you can still also support your children doing what they want to do. And both of those things can exist together. It doesn't inherently have to be a source of conflict.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. And so and honestly, I'm seeing quite a few folks do that. Truthfully, these days. Like,
I am too.
It's becoming more of a less and less of an anomaly, honestly. And I'm really grateful for that. And I respect that. And I admire families who are able to navigate those things. Really different members of the family do very much believe different things. And they also are learning how to navigate that family system amongst each other, while still respecting and caring about each other and showing up for each other. So it absolutely can be done. Yeah. Yeah.
I think so too.
So let's see. Oh, this is a good one. This will be interesting. How do I divert from passive aggressive insults?
I love this question.
I guess for clarity's sake, am I the one giving them or am I receiving them?
That's true. I was thinking that I would be receiving them, not the one giving them. But
my petty self I'm like, well, I mean, there's depending on the context, there's a likelihood I'm just kidding. But
yeah, exactly.
Had to ask.
So I fully am taking this from a client because I told her I would. She has said this to me, and I don't know if she made it up or this is where she got it, but she's very much the person that's just I'm not going to deal with this, and she goes, yeah, I just tell people now I'm surprised you thought it was okay to say that to me. And I was like, oh, that is amazing. So when people are giving passive aggressive comments, to just, if you want to just be assertive, to say, wow, I'm surprised that you thought it was okay to ask me that. Or I'm surprised that this is where you want to take the conversation. Or I'm surprised that you thought it was okay to say that to me. And I really like that because it gets at kind of the foolishness of the passive aggressiveness and also invites towards more direct conversation rather than this passive aggressive stuff. But also, you can just let it go too if you want to. If you're I don't want to play this game. I mean, there's people where they will make passive aggressive comments to me and I'm like, I don't have the energy to try to tease out what this is supposed to mean or to respond to what I think you want me to respond to. So you're an adult. You can ask me directly for what you want and we'll move on from there. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Mr. Petty?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's one of those things where depending on who the person is and what they're saying, maybe it's a thing where you can just let it go. Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe. If it's somebody that is maybe historically has proven that they are not open to direct or any kind of healthy conversation. In other words, it's not safe to, even if just emotionally safe, maybe it's not safe to really try to redirect that with, anything. And so in that case, maybe letting it go, or maybe the conversation isn't how to navigate them doing that, but rather just boundaries around not being around them so much. If that's something that they inevitably do to you, or maybe they do it to everybody. In some cases may be. So I think it just oftentimes depends. It's one of those things where I know I always make jokes about being petty, and I definitely can tap into that when I want to, but I mean, the reality is it's one of those things where if some, it depends who the person is, I think. It just depends who the person is. I'm not trying to start a power struggle with somebody. If I think that they're open to direct feedback about what I need and how I'm perceiving what they're doing, then yeah, then absolutely, I'll think of like, well, what might I want to say to them? But if I'm pretty sure that they are not open to that, I'll probably be thinking more of how to just not have to navigate spaces with this person and their icky energy, if that's how they're showing up consistently.
Yeah, I think that's good. And on that note, the next question.
Oh, wow.
I love, because it goes right along with it. My entire family is emotionally immature. How do I tell my siblings this tactfully?
Well, yeah, I think. Are you wanting me to comment on that first?
Yeah, you go ahead first. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, one place I'll start is that, well, first of all, if everybody or most everyone is emotionally mature to begin with, and that's the baseline we're dealing with, what I would say is you can say things as tactfully and as healthfully as is humanly possible, and they may still respond poorly.
Exactly.
Their response at the end of the day is not really within your control. So don't get too hung up on that. They might respond badly. And that's not necessarily anything to do with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you're starting with that baseline of everybody is emotionally immature, or most people are emotionally immature, you can probably also correctly assume that telling them that is not going to go over well. Like I'm laughing only because it's, kind of like, I get it. Like, right. When you see these patterns, we want to be able to help people and say, hey, let me point this out to you. And if you point it out and you know about it, then maybe you'll change it. And maybe that will happen, depending on the relationship you have with somebody. But more often than not, I think we have to invite people into examining themselves with curiosity, with compassion, with awareness, because they have to make the change themselves. And oftentimes it doesn't happen by just saying like, hey, by the way, you're not emotionally mature. It happens through other conversations, through showing up as an emotionally mature person and letting them notice what's different about you. Maybe that's an invitation for self-reflection on their part, right? So your only responsibility is to show up as an emotionally mature person yourself and to take care of yourself. And then perhaps other people will see that and do their own work. It's like whatever Saint Francis of Assisi, preach the gospel to all nations, and if necessary, use words. So preach the gospel of emotional maturity to everyone, and if necessary, use words. Like that's my very, religious saying, but no. But I think that's it is you show up, you take care of yourself and respond in ways that reflect your own value, worth, and emotional maturity.
Yeah, it is tough to deal with a family system that is what the standard way of showing up is in emotionally immature ways. Like that is hard. And so
yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. It looks like we have one more question for this episode, and that is, how can we recover from seeing unsafe family and self-abandoning effectively?
Oh, yeah, this is such a good question. I just want to validate that when you're entering into any space, including with family members, where you have to hold back parts of yourself, where you have to put in really strong boundaries, where you have to very much be on guard and hypervigilant for what could happen, that is physically exhausting. Of course, it's emotionally exhausting too, but it is also physically exhausting. And I would just invite you before you go into spending time with people, like take a really good look at, hey, when I've done this in the past, what is it that I have needed? How has it impacted me? So I know for some people, when I'm around them, it takes me a significant amount of time, a specific number of days where I need to be really slow. I might need to take some extra days off. I need to take extra care of myself in order to recover from seeing those people. And I would say, like, give yourself permission to be very honest and accurate about what that is for you. Is it that you need to maybe then shorten that trip and then give yourself some buffer time on the end before you have to go back to work, before you have to be in the presence of other people? Is it that you need to have some safe people to connect with? But I would say take stock of like what has happened in the past and how can we then move forward in a way that honors what tends to happen in those situations and the amount of energy that it takes and what you have left to give after that. What about you, Andrew? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, everything you said, really. It's just being very patient and compassionate with yourself. Just really checking in, seeing what you need. That can be twofold. What you need in that immediate moment, just to rest, to rejuvenate, but also what you need down the road, because depending on, I mean, unsafe can mean a lot of things, and there can be varying degrees of what that looks like, depending on what that is. And you get to decide what that is. That the conversation may actually be, I'm not going to be spending the holidays with them next year. Or maybe it's not to that extent. Rather, it's maybe you spent the whole weekend with them and it's like, I'll come in for a Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be there the whole weekend next time.
Yeah.
Because it is a tremendous amount of bandwidth if you are existing in spaces with people where you cannot safely allow your entire true authentic self to be seen. And that's, I know sometimes that's just the reality of what we have to navigate, but also like, let's not normalize betraying ourselves and diminishing ourselves to be safe. And if those spaces just aren't safe, then also maybe the conversation is how to spend less time in those spaces.
Yeah. I think that's all really helpful. And then the last thing I would add to that is like giving yourself permission to let that change from season to season, from year to year, from where you're at. You know, some years or seasons you might have extra bandwidth and others you might have more limited bandwidth. And I think it's okay to really check in with yourself as you're approaching this time of year, especially, and to say, hey, I might have been able to do this last year, but that's not where I'm at right now. Or maybe I actually have way more capacity this year than I did last year, and maybe it'll change again next year. That's totally fine. But I think giving yourself permission to really just do what you need in the moment and for the entirety of that time, and letting that change when and if it needs to and however it needs to is something that can be so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, these have been some really great questions. We have many, many more that are coming in our next episode. But I'm glad that we could do this, and hopefully people are able to take some things from it and be able to start preparing for all of the holidays.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just grateful to be able to provide this space to address, just talk about these things, just kind of, these different questions, because like, it's so hard. I mean, that's, one of the biggest things I just go back to is like when you are leaving the church or have left the church or maybe the relationship is complicated, as is often the case. I think it's just nice to have that support and hear other folks who've been in similar places.
Yeah. And on that note, I just want to add in that if you are needing extra support, if you need some individualized support working one-on-one with a coach, we do have a ton of amazing practitioners available at the Center for Trauma Resolution and Recovery, Andrew included. And so, everybody offers free inquiry calls. And so you can just head over to our website, traumaresolutionandrecovery.com. There's a button right on the front page that says start working with a coach today, and you'll see all of the practitioners that are available. You can schedule your free inquiry call and start working with someone to help you navigate not only this time, but also kind of moving past the holidays and, into the rest of the new year. So make sure you take advantage of that. We'll have all the information in the show notes. But I think with that, all God's people said, amen.
Amen.